Okay, so full disclosure, I just met Nadine 10 minutes ago. Maybe 15 if we're being generous. But I do feel like I have known her for quite some time because her reach has just been so profound on social media in the wake of a massive film being made about her. A life that seems like it's been 10 lives, and her personal story inspired me because she really is living the dream that we all have when we go through episodes of trauma. And when you go from supermodel to trophy wife to trauma victim to then trauma champion, helping thousands of women recover their power, Nadine, you have proved that there is a light at the end of the tunnel and that there is a rainbow after every storm. She has grown into a doctor of psychology with a master's in, let me look. Hold on.
A master's in counseling.
A master's in counseling, and it says here, training in an evidence-based psychotherapeutic treatment method called the neuroaffective relational model.
Good job.
That sounds very, very impressive, and I think the most remarkable thing about you is that you are so humble and so personable and so warm, because that's what you really need after you go through something Nadine has been through. And I'd like to welcome her to the Columbus Citizens Foundation, which is, I'm not a member yet, but, I'm thinking about it. And you should all think about it too, because this is such an amazing place to come together and to share our stories of being proud Italian Americans, which Nadine also is. So Nadine, show them how the Brooklyn girls do it.
I want to ask for a better introduction. Definitely not. So, I don't know how I talk to you, but I'll try. Okay, so first of all, thank you so much for coming. And some people I know for a very long time, some people I know through social media, some people I'm just meeting. And it's the most amazing feeling to know that I'm impacting people, because that's what my life is about. It's about impacting people and helping them become the best version of themselves that they can be. And not been an easy journey. There's been a lot of bumps along the way. But what happened is I ended up writing this. And so I'm going to talk about tonight why I wrote Run Like Hell. And there's a lot of reasons. I wrote it for personal reasons. I wrote it for professional reasons. And I also wrote it in response to the culture that we live in today. And so I'm going to start with reading the first section. And I'm going to go into my personal story of what inspired me. As women, most of us grew up knowing the Cinderella story. And as young girls, we often believed in the fairy tale. The idea that a handsome, charming prince would sweep you off your feet, pursue you with an endless passion, and rescue you from your worries, troubles, and sorrows. Surely this instant electric attraction would transform into a happily ever after relationship. A living example of fairy tales coming true. But there is a reason the Cinderella story ends with the wedding scene. Did anybody ever notice that? We never know what happens. They just say happily ever after, but there's no proof. Because so often what started as a fairy tale ends in a nightmare. And so I didn't write that. That's actually written by a therapist who wrote the foreword for my book. And so I have to say that, yes, as a young girl, I believed in the myth of romantic love. I mean, Disney princesses, growing up in the 80s, Pretty Women, codependent songs that Ophelia would listen to and stare at the ceiling. And I really did believe that someday my prince would come and save me. And this is ironic because I was raised by a real feminist mother. So, but that just shows you how culture profoundly shapes the beliefs that we have about ourselves. And yet, surprise, surprise, my prince turned into a wolf. He named himself that. So, some of you might have heard of a little movie called The Wolf of Wall Street. Anybody here heard of it? So this was 30 years ago, which so old, but that's okay. And this was when nobody was talking about trauma bonds. Nobody was talking about love bombing, gaslighting, which was in 2022 was the word of the year, and narcissism. And I fell madly in love with my ex-husband, the Wolf of Wall Street. And you know, as a young girl, I didn't think, oh, I'm falling in love with someone, I'm going to be in a trauma bond and they're going to torture me. You know? I mean, who goes into love thinking that? And that wasn't even in my consciousness. I didn't even know what happened to me actually could happen in life. Wow. And so, you know, now in retrospect, because I do so many podcasts, right? Didn't you see the signs? You know, what were the signs? But now I know. I was love bombed. I mean, my best friend since I'm 6 is here, and we lived together in Brooklyn when I first met Jordan. And Ophelia can attest to this. I was love bombed to the 10th degree. I mean, $15,000 in cash just for the hell of it. Showing up with a watch, flowers, trips, everything. But also my boundaries were plowed through. I was told that if I didn't, let me remind, there were so many threats, but let me say it correctly. If I didn't marry him, he wouldn't date me. If I wouldn't have children, he wouldn't marry me. So the threats and the domination and the coercive control was happening very early on, but I just thought, oh, he loves me. He just wants to be with me. And then he was very controlling, and we know coercive control is at the bottom of every trauma bond. Quit your job. You don't need, you're a model, you're gonna make $3,000, it's nothing, quit. So, you know, growing up poor from a single mother in Brooklyn, I was like, oh, that could be kind of nice to not have to work. Big mistake. And he was very possessive, extraordinarily jealous. I remember one time I was taking a golf lesson, because I was living in the suburbia now. That's what I need to do, I thought. And I was like, let me stop and get Jordan, you know, a sandwich. And I come home and he's like, where were you? I said, I was getting a sandwich. He's like, you're fucking the golf pro, aren't you? I was like, what? I'm a 23-year-old girl. No, I wasn't doing that. Now I know he was projecting what he was doing. But back then I didn't know, right? Then of course there was a drug addiction, which was, you know, through the roof as shown in the movie. So our love really was the quintessential trauma bond. But again, there was no path, there was no roadmap. Nobody was talking about this. I mean, I was in therapy and my therapist, I mean, she sat and listened to me for 7 years. It went every Monday at 1 p.m. And sometimes even when she would travel, I would show up at 1 p.m. like Pavlov's dog. And I'm like, she's on vacation, go home. But I was, you know, she never said anything to me even. So I was really alone in the woods back then. Luckily I had a very strong mother and beautiful friends, so they were helpful. But I was young and clueless, and I didn't know what I was dealing with. And if you've not read my book, or if you know about a trauma bond, you need to have 2 conditions for a trauma bond to exist. And the first one is a power imbalance. And clearly he had all the power, right? And so how does someone gain the power? By having more resources, or someone really has power over you just because you love them. They can abuse that power, and he was very dominating, intimidating, and threatening. So he instilled fear into me, and so he had power over me. And the second thing that needs to happen is something called intermittent reinforcement or intermittent abuse. And what that is sometimes I could come home and there could be a horse in my driveway, just as a gift. And, you know, he could buy me a yacht, which was never for me, I never wanted that. And he could be loving and kind and generous. But then the next minute, He could be cruel, controlling, insulting, and degrading. And so what the research shows is that animal trainers who train their animals with this sort of intermittent abuse, the animals bond to the trainer 230% more than straight kindness.
Mhm.
Now, I didn't know this back then, and when I read the research when I was writing my book, I jumped through the roof. Hallelujah, right? This is why women stay, because it actually creates a very strong attachment. And so our lives went on. We had 2 beautiful children. My daughter's a therapist. My son's a musician. They're awesome. And I always say what on the outside looked like Shangri-La, with yachts and homes and luxury galore behind the gates, I really felt like a prisoner. And I felt so trapped and so forlorn for many, many days. But, you know, I didn't know what it was, and I didn't know what I was in. So at being a highly conscientious, loyal, tolerant person, I was like, I can make this work. I can make this work. I know if I act this way, if I do this, he's going to love me. He's going to treat me differently. Wasn't the case. And so finally, Jordan's life caught up with him. And he was arrested on 11 counts of money laundering and given an ankle bracelet. And his lockdown bracelet, ironically, gave me freedom. Because, you know, a lot of people, especially men, no offense to the men here, on Instagram will say, you left him because he lost all his money, gold digger, this, that, right? And I'm like, I left him because he emotionally, physically, and verbally abused me for 7 years. And he told me that the only way I was going to leave this marriage was going to be in a body bag. And I finally felt safe enough to leave. And that's why I left. And being a self-reflective person, my friends know I was in therapy for 25 years, besides being a therapist. Everybody was like, you're codependent and he's an addict. And I was like, I'm codependent. I gotta fix myself. You know, nobody said, no, he's a pathological, crazy person that's been abusing you for 7 years, sister. You want a hug? Nobody said that. So I went to therapy, worked on myself, which, by the way, there's nothing wrong with that, right? I'm not upset that I did that, because it put me on my trajectory to do what I do today. But I knew there was something more. I'm like, it can't just be that he's codependent, I'm an addict. I mean, he's an addict and I'm codependent. It can't just be. It can't just be that. There has to be something more. So, fast forward. I want to make sure I don't miss the reading parts. Right. So, fast forward, I moved to Los Angeles. I wanted to get my kids out of New York. I didn't think they needed that legacy, and I fell in love with my husband. He was hiding somewhere. He's here. So I moved to Los Angeles, and I wanted to have a fresh start. And so, you know, in Los Angeles, what do? We drink green juice, we meditate, we do yoga. And I did all 3 of them. And so during one of my meditations, I was like, I'm going to go back to school to be a therapist. Now, I hadn't even finished college. High school I finished, right, Lucy? We went to high school together. So I had to still finish a 1.5 years of college online.
Wow.
I had to get my master's. And then while I was getting my master's, I just thought, let me just throw in a PhD. And so I did that. And I wanted to be a therapist because I thought therapy saved my life. When I was Jordan, granted my therapist didn't name what I was going through, but I think she did save my life because I had a place to go every week that was safe and how to manage my life. And so, but I always say, Jordan's like herpes. He's the gift that keeps on giving. Okay? And I had to say it, you know. So, while I was in school, Jordan had gone to jail at 22. And he had just finished his book, The Wolf of Wall Street. And of course, he calls me up and he's like, I wrote this book. I'm like, are you kidding me? Living with you was a great tragedy. It was horrible. I finally restarted my life. Now he writes a book. So he sends the book to me, And I throw it on the bed, I cry, I scream at him. And he's like, I did it for us. I'm like, no, you didn't do it for us. I'm fine. My life is great. You did it for you. But that's him. That's typical. And so, you know, so then I continue my studies. Let me just see. Okay, but this is an interesting story. So then he says he's going to make a movie. Oh my God, I can't. Okay, this is just nuts. So they use my name in the book, but I said, I am not going to let you use my name for the movie. I have no creative input, I make no money, it's not my narrative. And being the consummate seller that he is, he says, but you're gonna have $100 million campaign to do with whatever you want. And I was like, I don't want to do, I don't think I want to do anything, so I still said no. But little did he know, he planted the seed in my head. But he didn't know it then, right? So now let's get to my professional reasons of why I wrote Run Like Hell. Love is blind. How many times have you heard that expression? Perhaps you had said it to comfort a friend whose husband cheated on her. Maybe you've thought it after ending a seemingly idyllic relationship. Love can even make us blind to our blindness. We are not aware that we are missing anything. I said to myself after reading an anonymous direct message on Instagram, hi, I'm reaching out because I'm unsure what to do and need help. I am dating a narcissist and I've been trying to leave him. I've discovered he's cheating on me with a woman you know, a colleague of yours. Great. A colleague of mine? I only work with divorce attorneys, therapists, or divorce coaches. Okay, what in the world? I kept reading. I believe she has no idea he's involved with me. I have been internally fighting with telling her because he has threatened my job. I have seen through Instagram that she has introduced her children to him. He did the same thing with mine, which weighs on me since we both have been through high conflict divorces. She's with a man whom she does not know at all. Thank you for reading. I thought, well, Nay, it's official. You have become a trauma bond whisperer. I don't recall aspiring to be a trauma bond whisperer, nor did I earn my PhD to learn how a person emotionally bonds to an intimacy terrorist. Ugh, I felt sick telling my colleague that her boyfriend currently had another girlfriend and was possibly a pathological liar. Deception cloaked in devotion is hard to see. Even an expert can be seduced and conned again by a manipulative lover. Weakly women desperately ask me why they fell into a trauma bond, how do they leave, can they recover, and most importantly, how do they never ever endure one again? So what happened was I had an office in my home and I never wanted a specialty. I mean, for some reason I was against it. And always what we resist emerges, like I should know that as a therapist. But week after week, dozens of women came into my therapy room in trauma bonds. These beautiful, smart, kind, empathetic, amazing women. And they were getting emotionally and psychologically abused. They were experiencing extreme infidelity, financial abuse, they were coercively controlled. And I just thought to myself, there's a big problem here. We have a big problem. Like, you know, this isn't right. What is still happening? We're not in the 1950s. What is happening? And so, you know, if you've read my book, women, you know, the way I do it is I have 4 couples who are trauma bonded, and I use their stories throughout the clinical material to illuminate the clinical material so it's not terribly boring. And the sad part is that all of those stories in there are true. Now, of course, the names have been changed, but they're all true. And what I did in Run Like Hell is, you know, initially I introduced those couples. Then my second chapter is he twisted or tender, where I explain the personality of the pathological lover, who I don't just call a narcissist, and I have a personal pet peeve with that because pathological means mentally unwell, and I believe that someone that will harm, betray, use, and exploit somebody they love to get their needs met for power, money, pleasure, and status is mentally unwell.
Powerful.
And you're not just a narcissist if you do that. So that's the second chapter. In the third chapter, I describe trauma bonding, what it is, the stages. And in the fourth chapter, I discuss the woman. Because what happened in 2018, I read a book called Women Who Love Psychopaths. It's the scariest cover you've ever seen, but an excellent book. And it changed my life because she explained what I knew when everybody told me I was codependent. That women, there's a personality assessment, you can all take it on my website, okay? And it measures 5 personality traits: agreeableness, conscientiousness, neuroticism, openness, and extroversion. And what she said was that women that score high in agreeable and conscientiousness, which I score very high in both, are perfect prey for these people. And so I was like, aha! I knew it! Because we're always saying, she has a bad picker, she had developmental trauma, she doesn't know what she's doing. No, she just married a cruel, mean, pathological liar. And so in my book, I really want to turn the stigma away from the victim. Why are we re-victimizing the victims? Learned helplessness, she's a love addict. No, she's a woman who fell in love. And so I describe all the different personalities of the women that they can have, so they can learn their personality traits. And then the middle section of the book, I explore the emotional scars they get, how to leave safely, and why women leave, and then of course the last section, which is my favorite, how to heal. Because the research shows that especially people who have experienced relational trauma of this kind, 75% of them go on to experience post-traumatic growth. And everything I state is research, right? I, of course, have my own bias, but my bias is created by research. And I think that's just a great statistic. And it's real, and women go on to have better lives, more meaningful relationships, better senses about themselves. And healing is really possible. So that was the real professional reason why I wrote it. And I love my patients. And I tell my husband every single day, I have them, I know, he's like, I know, you have the most beautiful patients in the world. And I do. And I really do. And they inspired me, and their courage and their resilience it's really a phenomenal, beautiful thing to witness. And so hence why I tortured myself writing this book, because I didn't just want to help them. And so, but then, you know, you guys all live in the world, so it's also what's going on in the culture, right? It's not just happening in the homes. And so trauma bonds are a growing pain for millions of women. The COVID-19 pandemic alone has increased domestic violence by 8%. Modern society confirms physical violence as credible, verifiable, or legitimate abuse. In the United States, nearly 20 people per minute, equaling 1,200 an hour, 28,800 daily, and 10 million people yearly are victims of family and domestic violence. And 1 in 4 American women experience intimate partner violence from their trusted lovers annually. And I cannot give you the exact number of women because our health organizations are only starting to recognize coercive control and verbal abuse as actual abuse. Even more concerning is that nonviolent abuse is equally or more harmful than physical abuse. Domestic occurrences comprise the largest amount of calls to the police. And I believe that that number is much larger because we don't really put coercive control in there. And coercive control is now recognized as abuse in 5 states. So we're getting somewhere. And, you know, let's just do a little history lesson, because maybe those numbers sound inaccurate, but domestic violence only became a crime in 1973. Only in 1993 did it become illegal to rape your wife. Up until that day, consent was given once you got married, theoretically. So we have abuses of power everywhere. I mean, we see it, like last week,
or Puff Daddy. I mean, I don't know if you guys have done, I do all these deep dives into all of these stories because of what I do. I just watched the show Quiet on the Set, Nickelodeon, where there was all the abuses of power with the children on the sets of Nickelodeon. So, I mean, and we've seen Jeffrey Epstein, Harvey Weinstein, we've seen the Boy Scouts. So, I mean, it's not just happening in our homes, it's happening in the culture. And I believe the exposure of narcissistic, pathological people as extraordinarily harmful. It's part of the fourth wave of feminism. Because you cannot, the word narcissism, and I can't even say it without laughing, but it's because it's just everywhere. It's just everywhere. And so, my hope with this book is to destigmatize it for women that are victims of this. But more importantly, to educate them and empower them. And tell them, it's not your fault. It's not your fault, and it's your responsibility to heal. And that's why I wrote the book. And I'll read you the one last section, which I love this part, because this is a good part. Though a tornado of a trauma bond relationship leaves behind severe wreckage, it ruins families and women, destroys self-confidence, freedom, and personal growth, and causes humiliation, fear, economic ruin, heartbreak, physical harm, ugly custody battles, and decimated souls. I think that's a good reason. Yet trauma bond relationships and abuse are avoidable and resolvable. This book explains how to spot and stop a trauma bond relationship. Now you know the how, the who, the what, and why, so you can see them coming. Pathological lovers have destroyed your mind to control and exploit your heart. They specialize in creating mystery, but withdrawing the curtain reveals someone without a moral compass who cannot love you. As I have explained, prioritizing your recovery is your immediate need after escaping your trauma vortex. I hope you know now that love never warrants use and abuse. Emotional, mental, financial, and verbal abuse damages just like physical abuse. Love does not have to hurt or destroy you like before. Learning to live and love again means finding a balance, loving others without abandoning yourself. And so that's what I hope that all my women discover for themselves, because it is possible. That doesn't mean it's always sunshine and roses. But we can grow, we can heal, we can recover. And thank you so much for coming. Now, you can ask me anything. Right here?
Oh, are you accepting new patients?
Yes.
I was just wondering, I do agree with moving away from language like codependent and narcissism. For one, it's so loaded that you just need a new fresh start, and something that's more science-based will always be less spinnable, I guess.
Okay.
But I guess I have a tendency towards extremes, and growing up with a mother who had a similar situation, and realizing for her, I'm like, well, these are the clear steps that you missed, so I'm just gonna never do that. And then I realized maybe running away from codependency just ran me into something else. And I'm wondering, how do you find a way to gauge being your own independent person? Because I think it's easier to fall into someone else if you don't have boundaries, and I understand that that's something that, like, I think there could be more done to teach about that and things like that.
Yeah.
But how do you prevent from, or if you have any insight into, how do you prevent from just withdrawing into yourself? I feel like that might be something that people who have this type of situation as like a backlash or a reaction,
Of course.
which doesn't seem like it's healing, but seems like something natural, so.
Oh, sure. I mean, if the person that, beautiful question, thank you. If the person that you thought was going to love and you could trust harms you, I mean, people become dangerous, right? And so what I say to that is, I remember feeling like, not that I couldn't trust other people, but I couldn't trust myself to make the right decision about people. And so, see what I'm saying? Yeah, you just nodded, right?
So trust.
Yeah,
Okay. Yeah,
right.
that makes sense.
Yeah, so that's why I really believe in therapy and assessments. And so when you're in a trauma bond, you're so obsessed with the person, right? So I always say to my patients, and some of them are here, and I'll say, turn the mirror back on yourself. Get curious about you. What do you need? What do you like? Who are you? What are your personality traits? What are your attachment patterns? Become an expert on you and hold all this information in a loving, self-compassionate way and really get to know yourself. And then you'll learn more self-trust. And that doesn't mean we don't make mistakes, because of course we do. But you'll feel more trusting within yourself to choose, hopefully wiser. But again, if somebody's presenting themselves in if they're wearing a mask, it can be tricky. But if you read the pathological lover checklist, right? Check. And so, so that's a great question. Yeah, it is very hard to go back out there and trust again. And that's also something that you get to do slowly at your own pace and your own time. But even if you don't want a lover partner, I think it's really important to connect with people, because we cannot become resilient alone. We can only build resilience in connection.
Thank you.
You're very welcome.
I have a question.
Yes.
So I read a statistic somewhere, and I don't even know if it's entirely accurate, but I heard that it takes 7 attempts on average to leave an abusive partner, whether that be physically abusive, emotionally abusive. I think it was mostly speaking about physical abuse. How many attempts did it take you to really gather the courage to leave your situation?
Yeah, I didn't make that many attempts. In my mind, I did. I was like, I hope his helicopter crashes today. That's kind of like something, but I was so afraid and I was so tethered to him that I couldn't really make an attempt. But the research does say 4 to 7 times. And the reason is a good question, because of the cognitive dissonance, right? That's the glue. Is he good? Is he bad? Am I good? Am I bad? Is the relationship good? Is the relationship bad? So the cognitive dissonance keeps you very confused. And so once you leave, and then he starts the love bombing and all the Prince Charming stuff, it's like, oh, he's not that bad, right? So, but that just wasn't my experience. My experience was, once he had the ankle bracelet on, I'm out. But the interesting story to that is that I was still really afraid of him, and God bless my mother, who's not here. She said to me, Jordan got arrested, I want you to go to a lawyer. I want you to protect yourself. And so I sat down, and the lawyer said to me, I hear you want to get divorced. So she helped me, right?
Mm-hmm.
But yeah, and so it wasn't, I didn't have a lot of attempts, but most people do.
Dr. Name,
Yes.
I kind of see you as like an activist. Do you know what
Yes.
I mean? And kind
Yes.
of what you were talking about, the fourth wave of
Feminism, yes.
Can you talk a little bit more about that, and if you feel that the culture really is fucking getting this? Do you know what I mean?
The fourth wave of feminism started in 2012 with the kind of the Me Too movement, right? And everybody on the internet coming out and talking about the abuses of power that they experienced. And so I don't know if you guys know anything about the act that just closed, the American Survivors Act, where up until January 1st, right? Anybody who was raped or physically abused could come forward because without a statute of limitation. So that's why P. Diddy and all these people are now getting in trouble. Okay?
So,
Yeah, so I think as a culture, we are naming it and taming it, and we are recognizing it, but you have to remember, the more we stand up, sometimes the more they're gonna double down, and that's okay. But yeah, I do think that it's the fourth wave of feminism. But I don't look at feminism against men. I mean, let me just explain that. So when we live in a patriarchy, it's just that there's a hierarchy and there's always a top dog and a bottom dog. I just want everybody to be equal dogs.
Yeah, like the values of,
Yeah.
you know what I mean?
Yeah, right. It's
Yeah.
like there's always one person in charge. And so I just think in relationships, especially partnerships, it'd be nice for people to be thought of as equals.
It'd be nice to, just also have like younger people educated about this.
Yes.
A lot of your book is about education.
Yes,
Do you know what I
yes,
mean?
it is, it is.
And it's like for,
Yes, right. I'd like to,
as if the statistics are what they are, I mean.
yeah, but there is hope, because I see my daughter, who's with John and I spent a lot of time with the baby, and she's in a great marriage. And they do everything 50-50, and it's beautiful to see, And I see our son, and so I do see things changing.
Very iconic.
Yeah, things are changing, so there's hope, yes.
So, first of all, thank you. And I at one point was in one of those relationships years ago.
Yeah,
But as a woman, I often think too about the men. And it's a lot fewer, right? It's probably 80-20, 20% the men.
mm-hmm.
Do you do anything in terms of, and it's more just an interesting point to me,
Yeah,
coaching with men that are in the
Sure.
opposite kind of relationships?
sure, yeah, of course, yes, if a man comes to me and wants to, of course, yeah, I've worked with plenty of men. And of course, that happens to them too, right? It's just what comes to me in my own room and what the research shows, it's mostly women, so that's why I did that in my book. But of course it happens
Absolutely.
to men, yes.
Yeah.
And sometimes they'll say, hi, on social media, what about me? I'm like, I see you, I see you, I know you're there. Yeah,
No,
so
and
we want to validate them too, because pathology is pathology, it hurts everybody.
Yeah, no, absolutely, and again,
Yes, thank
I
you.
think it's amazing what you're doing, and I belong to, I work for an organization, Workday, and we're all about equality and women at Workday, and this is very inspiring, so thank you.
Thank you.
You ever get any irate husbands calling you because they think they're breaking up your relationship?
I actually had this happen this week, and this is when
Good question.
So
Were you calling?
I had somebody
Not my
call me
relationship.
and say, Nadine, it's a friend, an old friend. I am so mad at you, you broke up my marriage of 24 years. And I said, I did? And I started to laugh. He goes, Nadine, it's not funny. And I was like, oh, no, I'm not laughing. But okay, let's explain this. He's like, yeah, a few years ago I wasn't gonna make a lot of money. Maybe I was a little abusive, but I never hit her. And I was like, yeah, I get that. Okay, yeah. Well, I'm like, well, didn't you want to get married for the past 15 years and you didn't marry her? And he was like, yeah, but you don't need to. I'm just telling you, like, people are listening to you. You gotta watch what you say. And I just went into my therapist mode and I was like, I know, I hear you, it's hard. I didn't want to say to him, are you kidding me? But no, I just was like, no, I get it, it's hard. And, but literally he's like, what's this run like hell? Okay, yeah, she ran away. You better be careful. I was like, okay, have a good night. Yes.
How long did it take you once you left Jordan to trust yourself to be in a relationship and to trust the other person that you were with not to be another Jordan?
25 years, no, I'm joking. I would say it took me, well, after I left Jordan, I went to a clinic called the Karen Foundation. Now it's called Breakthrough, where you go in for a week and like no cell phones, and you go from 6 to 11, where you really learn about yourself. Because it was the week between Christmas and New Year's, and I was like, I've been on enough yachts in St. Bart's, and that didn't work so well. I'm gonna check myself into a clinic, and I did. And so that really even taught me more than even my therapy did. And so I would say a good 2 years. The healing takes at least 2 years. Yeah.
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 I have a question.
Yeah.
So you lived through this exceptional experience of having a major motion picture made about your life by one of, the world's most prolific directors. And as a 26-year-old girl, I'm watching this on screen, and I'm watching this incredible scene where you are saved from a sinking yacht in the water by a helicopter. And in the grand scheme of your life and your trauma, how did that compare to just being married to some guy? Like, I mean, watching it on the big screen, so to speak,
Right.
felt very emotional.
Yeah, it was.
And how did that play into the story that you were then living in your marriage?
Yeah, so 2 people who are here that were with me on the yacht.
Good for you.
Yeah.
Yeah,
we only, so that was very horrific, and we were out for 18 hours, I think, in those seas. 12? Okay.
12.
Yeah, he was there, yeah. So we all thought we were gonna die, for sure. And the interesting thing, and now I know this as a trauma therapist, when you feel like you're gonna die, you think people scream, no, everybody starts to shut down to prepare for death. And so we were definitely all thought that. And then at 5 a.m., I had a feeling, I just said, we're not gonna die tonight. But I did feel like I was going to. And then they came and hoisted us up into the helicopter, and we went on an Intrepid.
San Giorgio.
Yeah. And so they rerouted the Intrepid that was going to Africa.
Wow.
Yeah. And
Or is that
Come on, get us there.
Italian transport on its way to Sarajevo that stopped
and so they saved us, yeah. So I mean, I think that's a pretty, and then of course the yacht sank to the bottom, right? So I think that was like a symbol for us, that all that glamour and glitz and ridiculousness was unsustainable, and we couldn't float anymore. And yeah, that was towards the end. It was the first time I left my children. Yeah, but my life was continually like that because it was one crazy thing after the next, right?
What's another trauma?
Right. Yeah, that one was the top, and that one was the top. And when my ex-husband kicked me down the stairs, that was
So,
that was
so
the
not
end.
just trauma, just I'd love to hear about like one crazy thing that is like, I can't believe, let's forget about the trauma, just like crazy.
Fun things.
Well, yeah, I'm leaving it open.
Yeah, I don't know, crazy. I think the whole thing was crazy. Yeah, I don't think there was a lot of normalcy, having a 10,000, I was poor in Brooklyn, so, having a 10,000 square foot house with a driver and a cook and maids and land and landscaping and, the whole thing was just a big wild ride. There wasn't very much normal. But when you're living with a crazy person,
Everything's probably crazy.
yeah. Yes.
I have a question as a survivor and a new therapist. I think that when I see these situations, I find like the nature of it from life experience and from watching others is that it creates a very isolating experience for the victim. And bridge together the isolation and the support someone needs, or the outlets of things to
Yeah.
help them
Yeah.
get out of these situations.
Yeah, well, the first thing is, most women don't come in and tell me the truth. Because they feel like if they tell me the truth, I'm gonna tell them, you have to leave. I don't work like that, right? It's their process, it's their life. And so that's why the relationship with the therapist is so important, because you become a real trusted person. And so what you create in the therapy room by being that trusted person, the person has an embodied experience of trusting somebody. And that happens over time. And then they can translate that out. But the way I work too is I have like kind of a wraparound team. So if I'm dealing with really intense cases, I'm engaging with the lawyer. I'm helping them write letters, I'm helping them write emails. I'm not just like, 50 minutes is up, I'm back, right? So I'm in their lives. I will, then they have a divorce attorney. I always say, like it's emotional triage work. They can call me, they can text me, nobody ever breaks a boundary. And I connect a lot of my patients, like this whole, unless, somebody doesn't want that, but this whole anonymity thing, like I had one girl who was really, had her head smashed into the floor, and I had another patient who I helped who, we did the temporary restraining order right, we did all that, I said, call her. And so we there is a network out there, and I connect them to that network, but I also become that safe harbor for them. Does that help?
Yes, absolutely.
Okay, I think we can fit in one or two more questions. Does anybody else have any?
I'll ask a question.
Well, mine is a little bit X-rated, and
We love those. Bring it.
I think you addressed it already in the IG, but I was wondering when Jordan was with the cameras and the babies, and you was with your skirt and nothing under, and he's like, oh, what?
Yeah, I wish I was that sexy. Never happened. The cameras were in the room. But no, I was running around, I think, in my horseback riding pants and boots, sniffling because I was allergic to horses. Yeah.
Okay, great to know.
Okay, so I never related, I want to say thank you for helping women have a voice. I have never related to someone so much. I literally booked a hotel and came from Pennsylvania because I knew I had to be here to see and meet you face to face. Well, I've been afraid to speak, and I'm starting to find my voice. A year ago, I looked totally different. Like, I don't even look the same. I'm working with a trainer but I sit down to write, and I'm still scared, and I still feel shame, and I'm thinking of all the people who don't want me to share my story.
Yeah.
So I was wondering if you would be able to help me, or be willing to help me learn how to share it. And I think I talked to you online a little bit. I don't know if you remember the color from my brand.
Yeah, well, shame is very real. So what do you think is getting in the way the most? Because clearly you are open to change, you're making changes. What do you think is blocking you? Is it the shame from writing, or is it the fear of the other people's judgment?
When I sit down, my brain spins and I get nervous.
Yeah. Okay, so in my book, I think I talk about some grounding exercises, and like probably using your breath. And if you take a short in breath and a longer out breath, it helps your nervous system calm down.
Yeah.
Right, and just really grounding yourself and setting an intention. Like, what is your intention for writing?
To help women. I don't even want to do it for me. I don't want to. You know what I mean? I just think of the women who I dated, and it was the movie.
Yes.
That was me in my whole 20s. Rich men, drugs, I'm totally transformed, but just, it was one after the other though, and I'd be like, I did it again?
Yeah.
So I'm really working through years of just continuous thinking I deserve abuse.
Yeah, right. Right. So just take the pressure off yourself. You know, I think the more we judge ourselves or put pressure on ourselves, the more resistant we can become.
Yeah.
Sometimes it helps if you just take the pressure off yourself and then see what naturally emerges, and then, okay, I can write right now.
Yeah.
But it will come because you're putting it out into the ether and you're giving voice to it.
Trying.
Yeah, no, it'll come.
Thank you, because your bravery is helping me with my bravery, so. Yeah.
Red flag.
What?
The wolf, red flag.
He said the wolf red flag.
What do you mean?
The checklist.
Uh-huh.
The what?
What do you tell people now when their boyfriend loves the Wolf of Wall Street?
Oh, I did.
You know the checklist, yeah.
Oh, yeah. Your favorite movie is The Wolf of Wall Street. Yes, thank you, honey. Thank you so much, everybody.
So Nadine has pre-signed some books already, so on your way out, be sure to stop at the table and she will give you your copy.
Thank you so much.